I feel like with middle school, you kind of get a second chance. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I screwed up my kids. Now they're in middle school and they're a complete train wreck. Well, no, think of middle school as a chance for you to do it all over again. In this video, I'm gonna share with you some well-needed encouragement, especially if you are a parent of a middle schooler. My name is Ailani. I am a former public and private school teacher. I am a homeschool mom of 4 kids, age, let me think about that, 11, 10, 7, and 4. And I taught middle school for over 10 years in the public and private school realm. Let's just call it that. This is, I'm really excited, a collaboration with Abby from Rooted in Rest, as well as Tony with Our Thrifty Homeschool. I love these ladies so much, and I had to reach out to these ladies to see if they wanted to join me. Abby is someone who I have respected and admired for many years. She's someone that I like to listen to on the car as I'm on my way places. Her voice is very soothing. We have a lot of very similar philosophies. Tony, she's just so spunky and eclectic and has such an amazing personality, and I just love her so very much. So both of these ladies have middle school kids, students. They don't want to be kids anymore. They're middle schoolers. They're preteen. They want to be called preteens. And they're going to share with you some encouragement if you need a little bit of that encouragement, because I think a lot of parents of middle schoolers need that encouragement. Am I right? Give me an amen. For real. So as I mentioned before, I did teach middle school for over 10 years with public and private school kids, and I loved it. Okay, I'm one of those weirdos that absolutely loved it. I am fascinated with the middle school brain. I just, I've done the preschool thing, the elementary school thing, and now we're on to middle school. I love it. But I also understand that not every single parent is like that. A lot of parents aren't like that. I mean, if we look at a middle schooler, they can do a lot of surprising things. We've got everything from meltdowns to sassiness to forgetfulness to endangering their life on accidentness, self-awareness, very much self-awareness. They recognize a lot of things. But there is a reason behind all of this, and it has to do with what's going on inside of this thing right here. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. But before I get started, I'm just gonna lay this out there. If you are not willing to laugh and explore and have fun with your middle schooler, your life is going to be absolutely miserable. And I think that is the key element to surviving this middle school season. And it is a season. It's a season. You see, when I taught middle school, we had some common things that we would repeat to each other when we needed to make each other feel better as teachers when describing middle school kids. It just, And hopefully this is gonna help you kind of understand where I'm going with this video. Now, this is something that I caught myself saying to the parents a couple of times. Don't worry if your child is not learning every single thing. They're gonna review everything in high school anyway. Now, why on earth would I say that to a parent? Well, that's because in that age bracket, the 10, 11, 12, 13, you're going to see a lot of staring out the window, forgetfulness, and selective learning. Everything else, though, doesn't really matter. Just their little bubble of things that are important to them. I'm going to talk about that why in just a second. But there's just a bunch of stuff they just don't learn. And you as a parent know that that's really important if they're wanting to get into a good college, if they're wanting to get a good score on their SATs, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's right around the corner. Why do they just not care about this stuff? I used to say, don't worry, you're going to repeat all of that stuff when you get to high school. And that's true. If you really think about it, what do you do for the first half of Algebra 1? Oh, review pre-algebra. What do you do for the first half of Algebra 2? Review Algebra 1. You see what I'm saying? There's a little bit of repetition going on there. Another thing that we used to talk about with the other teachers is how they act like kids, little kids, elementary school kids, but they're also doing a lot of that critical thinking, so they have a little bit of an adult-like mentality. You can talk to them a little bit like adults, but you can laugh and giggle and make jokes about kiddie-type things. It's like little kids in almost big people bodies. It's this weird, like, in-between stage, but everything is so fun and exciting for them. Sometimes a little bit too much fun and exciting that it just gets a little frustrating and you get concerned that they're becoming obsessive compulsive. I'm gonna talk about that in a second too. I mean, okay, so for example, like stickers. Middle schoolers love stickers. Well, a lot of them do, right? I bust out the stickers and they seem like they don't like it, but deep down inside they do. Trust me, they love stickers. Smelly markers, and smelly pencils, and smelly crayons because they're cool. Unicorns and Pegasuses and cartoons, still super cool. A bright colored fidget toys, yeah. They love those things, like the squishy balls and the like fidget spinners. That was like a middle school thing. The fidget spinners, the slap bracelets from the 80s. Do you remember that no, I'm dating myself, but slap bracelets, totally a middle school thing. Another thing that we would talk about as teachers, even with the parents, is how middle school is like a roller coaster, an emotional roller coaster that goes up and down and up and down, and they want to take you for a ride. Don't jump on that roller coaster with them. Don't do it. I'm going to give you some pointers later on how not to jump on that roller coaster. It's really hard not to sometimes. But putting that to the side, I want to talk about the middle schooler's brain, which is very, very complex. In fact, we all know and we all have heard that the middle school brain and the middle school body changes more during that age, 10, 11, 12, more than any other time in their life. Maybe it's comparative to when they're an infant. It's a huge, you get it, right? And understanding how the middle school brain works is going to help explain things to you and really put things into perspective. It helps you have a little bit more patience and a little more ability to cope through some of those just times. So you have the frontal lobe, which is located in the front here, and it is actually starting to develop during this time. It's moving slow. In fact, the frontal lobe is not going to fully develop until they're around 20s. The girls develop faster than boys, and that's why you're going to find a lot of the 20-something boys, they tend to do some impulsive things that aren't quite safe. And girls are quote-unquote more mature. It has to do with the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe, that whole area is a beautiful thing because that's going to help you work with your planning things out, help you plan for your future, decision-making skills, long-term goals. It actually helps you stop certain behavior, kind of like self-control, and it helps you regulate emotions. So you have the frontal lobe, and then you have something called the limbic system, and that's like in the middle. Actually, it's, in the brain. And the limbic system actually develops super, super fast. It's actually the first thing to develop during these stages. There's a lot of stuff in the limbic system, but the two things I'm going to focus on is the amygdala and the hypothalamus. Now, the amygdala is in charge of your emotions and your emotional responses. And the hypothalamus is all the hormone thing. I'm not going to get too much into that because we know what's happening physically. We want to know what's happening inside and why they're driving you crazy sometimes. So you got your amygdala that really grows and develops rapidly. And so you've got these emotionally charged feelings all of a sudden. But here you've got your frontal lobe that's taken its time. It's taken its time to develop. That's your self-control. That's your regulating emotions. You're going to get some interesting stuff happening with all this emotional stuff going on and the inability to control that and regulate that. Here's a fun one. So you know how middle school kids like to, obsess with pop stars or obsess with music or get obsessed with video games? Music, how emotionally charged they are when they hear music. Well, that's because they're actually feeling the emotion more when they hear the music than adults, but that's because their emotions are overboard and they can't regulate them. Same thing is true when they have a little crush on a movie star. They're feeling all these emotions, but they can't regulate them. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there, and they're struggling to regulate them, and they know that when they can't regulate that emotion, people may laugh at them, people may think they're stupid, they have insecurities, and their self-awareness is huge. So then they just get more emotional, and then, it's just one giant, it's a mess. I mean, you can call that moodiness, they have meltdowns, emotional outburst, and on top of that, you got some poor judgment going on. They're making some really bad choices. It's just such a hard time. When I was a middle school teacher, one of the things I always tried to do is remember back when I was in middle school and how I felt. That helped me by putting myself in their shoes to have a little bit more empathy for them and understanding and a lot more patience, because you have to have patience with these middle schoolers. And I think just by understanding all of this, automatically, it just puts you in that mindset. Now there's more stuff that's going on inside of that brain. You've got something called the pruning. Have you heard of the pruning? Okay, we all know what pruning is. There's a big giant tree and it's getting old. You just cut away the bad branches that aren't being quote unquote used anymore, and then the tree just flourishes. So that's what's actually, not the flourishing part, but the pruning part is happening in middle school. Their brain is actually cutting away and taking away the parts that aren't being used. It's kind of like the you don't use it, so you're gonna lose it stage. Side note, if there's anything that you want to make sure that your middle schooler is going to continue to use and appreciate as they get older, make sure through that age you're doing it good habits, making sure they brush their teeth at the morning and night. That's simple stuff like that. Opening the door for people, making sure they put their clothes in the laundry basket. You can also do academics too. I make sure that my kids are constantly playing a musical instrument of some kind during this age, being responsible to get their work done. You want your kid to not be procrastinating, of course, right? For the rest of their lives, get them out of that habit. I feel like with middle school, you kind of get a second chance. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I screwed up my kids. Now they're in middle school and they're a complete train wreck. Well, no, think of middle school as a chance for you to do it all over again. Guide those pruning shears a little bit by laying down good habits, good discipline, good structure, quality, those things that are important to you. It's a second chance. Another thing that's really, really cool that's happening with your middle schooler during this stage, this pruning stage, is that you're going to start seeing them hyper-focus or selective learn on certain things, okay? Not all kids the same, and God's designed each and every one of us to be different. During this time, you're going to start seeing those gifts and talents that God has placed inside of them grow and sprout. Because they're pruning that other stuff away, they're building and flourishing, starting to flourish and bud in those little areas. You're going to see where their passion lies. You're going to see, are they going to be a leader? Are they going to be artistic? Are they going to be sporty? Are they going to be scientific? Are they going to be musical? And this is going to help kind of guide you as you're guiding them. Super exciting. Now, something else that is forming is the myelin formation. And this is your fatty tissue. It's kind of surrounding, it's in the neurons. The point is it's forming, and it's in working order, so to speak, which helps them to become very, very teachable, very, very flexible, and they respond faster to things, okay? You may not think so, but let me give you some examples. How many times has your child corrected you on something and they were actually right about it? Right, it usually comes out in real world situations, or it's the most random thing in the world, like random facts that they know or quotes from movies. Can you remember, like seriously, like think back, if you can quote movies or quote songs, like where did you actually learn them? Like when did you actually learn them? All right, stop. Collaborate and listen. Ice is back with his brand new edition. Something grabs a hold of me tightly, flow like a harpoon daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo, I don't know. Turn off the lights and I'll glow. I just dated myself. But I learned that when I was in middle school. I could keep going if you want me to, but I got... Middle schoolers are also really starting to problem solve and use some really good critical thinking. One of their favorite things they're obsessed with is fairness. It's not fair. Mom, that's not fair. It's not fair. Why does she get to go outside and I don't? It's not fair that my math is harder than my little brother's math. Nothing is fair. And, you feel the need to constantly remind them why it's not fair, or tell them why it's not fair, or you just like shut down and said, because I said so. I think that's when we start really using the phrase, because I said so. They are super curious and they obsess about it. They want to know why or why not. And because there's a ton of emotional responses and the inability to kind of, regulate that, you're going to see meltdowns, explosions, yelling, name callings, all that fun stuff. Breathe with me, mamas. Breathe with me. It's when I get into the don't take that ticket, on their little roller coaster trip. Don't take that ticket. It may be free, but don't take that ticket. Some of you might be like, what do you mean don't take the ticket? What does that mean, don't take the ticket? Okay, let me explain it. You take the ticket, you're gonna start arguing with them, yelling with them, and both of you are like at this screaming match, because that's kind of really what they want you to do, is join them on their little like inability to regulate their emotions and their emotional overload. You're going at it, right? Okay, but if you don't take the ticket, you know what you do? You go, okay, all right. Okay, so when you're done with that, let me know and then we'll have a conversation. That's not taking the ticket. Okay, so for example, because this has never happened to me before, you give them a math assignment and they want to go outside and do something with their friends, but they haven't finished their math assignment and they don't think it's fair that they don't get to play with their friends. So you say, well, you know what, you need to finish your math assignment. And then they come back and they say, but why? And they start whining and start getting all upset and emotional. And you say, that's fine, you know, you want to do that? I'm going to give you a third page of math to do. And then they just start having this complete meltdown. Well, you could either let them just finish their meltdown, which does take some time, you know, it takes about a half an hour, maybe a little bit longer. Let them finish. Don't take the ticket to ride that roller coaster. And then when they're done, you say, okay, you got 3 sheets of math to do. We could either start right now or we could go through this again. It's your choice. And they make the choice. If they want to go through it again, you just do the same thing again until they finally get the fact that you're not budging. They actually like that. They'll never say that, but they actually like to know where their boundaries are, because for the first time since their brain is changing a little bit, they're seeing things differently. Like they're going from, you know, this straightforward kind of thinking to critical thinking and seeing their way around things and seeing things from other people's perspective. And now they really want to know where these boundaries are. So they're going to test them. And you're going to have to be firm, black and white, done. These are it. If they see you budging a little bit, they're going to manipulate you to death. So be firm with your boundaries. And also be prepared to listen to them talk a lot, because they will try to talk their way out of something or their way into something. But stay firm with your boundaries. So with all that being said, relationship is the key, because you can lay down those boundaries all you want, but if you don't build a relationship with your child, it's not going to work. They're not going to have respect for you. They need to know that you love them. In fact, they need to know that you love them now more than ever, because like I said before, they're becoming self-aware. They're noticing that they can't control their emotions and regulate their emotions. And so they're having a lot of insecurities, and their body is changing. So they don't know what the heck. They're just all over the place. So they just need to know that you are their parent. You are a stable parent. You are strong, and your love for them is never, ever going to change. They need a strong you to help them make sense of this world around them, because right now they can't. And here's another thing. If they actually come to you with those meltdowns and outbursts and crying fits, guess what? It means that they actually trust you and they actually want your help. They may fight you and say they don't, but they do. You know how I know this? Because I've seen the result of when you give them that firm guidance and they fight you on it, and then within the next hour or two, they're following your guidance. Maybe it's the next day. Sometimes you have to be really patient. Maybe it's a couple months. They're going to follow your advice, especially if you don't take the train and be that firm, strong parent that you are created to be. I'm for real serious. For real. I also want to remind you that it's important to sometimes separate your emotions from certain middle school encounters, because there are some really tough situations that your middle schooler may encounter. So here's the simple one. I really need to go to this flag football game. My friend is going to be there, and if I don't go, she's going to hate me for the rest of her life. But you also know that your child refused to do their history project for the co-op the next day. What do? She didn't do it. She should have done it, and she knew that she was going to get something taken away or a punishment of some kind. Don't get emotional here. You know, maybe you're friends with the mom and she's crying and I'm going to lose my best friend. You have to separate that and look at the facts. She didn't do it. She wants to go. That's her responsibility. How many times in our life we lose things that are important to us, it's life. Sorry. You see, your firmness with middle schoolers is going to set them up for life. Like I said, second chance. Middle school is your second chance. I really do believe that there are two things that you really need to be doing when you have a child in middle school. I kind of mentioned one, and that's that love them unconditional. Build that relationship. And of course, I mean, this is just outside of the two, but you do need God because everything you do and say comes from Him. That's where your wisdom comes. I know you know that. But the other thing that I want to mention is laughter. Middle schoolers are so funny. Oh my gosh. And they're so fun, right? Like I said, they're like little kids in big people sortish bodies. They have so much fun. They laugh, they giggle, they explore things. They go on an adventure, go on a middle school adventure, not the roller coaster one, but like an adventure where they're like, hey mom, can we go down? You know, like just a middle school adventure. They are so fun because things are so cool to them. It makes you kind of re-explore life a little bit with your kind of adult mentality with the critical thinking. And they say like the most randomest of stuff. Oh my gosh, I knew a teacher once that had a bulletin board and like random quotes that the kids would say that made no sense. She would write it and put it up on the bulletin board. So whenever we needed a good laugh, we would go and read her little bulletin board. It was fun. They say random stuff. Jot those down in a journal, seriously. And maybe when you're having one of those days where you're like, ugh, you can read them and just kind of laugh with them. Have all the fun you want because you know that your kids are pruning. You know that their brains are going to work. You know God has complete control over the entire situation because they're going to flourish when they hit high school, especially if you're showing them that love, especially if you're having fun with them. They're going to flourish. But that is something that you can trust because that is how God designed it to happen. So thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to check out Abby's video as well as Tony's video. They're listed in the description box below. Once again, my name is Leilani. This is our channel Living with Eve. Feel free to subscribe to our channel. Yes, I'm super excited about raising a 6th grader, but I also have my youngest has Down syndrome. So I'm also sharing with you a lot of things that I'm doing with her to help raise her to be successful, all that fun stuff, as well as of course my 3 others, my 6th grader, my 4th grader, and my 2nd grader. So I'm gonna stick a video around my face right now. After you check out Abby and Tony's, feel free to stop by and check out some of my other videos. And until then, I'm gonna see you guys hopefully in my next video. Bye.